Hello and welcome to the Truth About Storytelling. This is Tyreen Martinson, and I am a poet, podcaster, and author. I recently returned from Mongolia at the beginning of September, and I decided to dedicate my month of September of podcasting to reflections on my trip from Mongolia, my trip to Mongolia, on fast facts about Mongolia. Those are on Wednesdays, and on writing ideas and writing prompts based on my trip to Mongolia and back. So this was a faith-based trip. It was a mission trip, but we had a lot of fun on the trip too. And we really grew in our community, in our little small mission trip team community. And that was really great. It really helped me build up my courage and helped me feel encouraged by my team members. And I think that a lot of what I experienced in Mongolia was unique to Mongolia, but there was also something about the community of our team and the makeup of it that was truly unique, because even though I've known Mia for at least 20 years, if not nearly 25 years, and I've known Matt for nearly that long, I've known Pastor Peter for about 13 years. I only met Dave on the trip, but I got to know him pretty quickly, and I knew him through Peter's stories about his youth pastor. And then I had met Pastor Shaka and Haka a few times before, and then there were a lot of new people that I met. But as far as our core team was concerned, it just felt like we solidified into a very encouraging team of people working together with a heart for Christ and a heart for sharing God's love with other people. And it was a really beautiful thing. Now, on my first episode about my reflections from Mongolia, I kind of walked through the first three days, and it was a little bit out of order, but I basically covered most of what we did those first 3 days. We went shopping. We had a very nice lunch made by Pastor Shaka and Haka. We went and looked at some historical sites. The place that we shopped was actually a historical site. It was the State Department store, and an old Russian building is several stories high, and one of the floors is dedicated to work created by Mongolian artists. And so that was kind of great to see Mongolian products and Mongolian artists really having their work put forward and being able to select souvenirs that were meaningful as well as just fun to get for friends and family. But after those first 3 days in Ulaanbaatar, and even after the incredibly beautiful and wonderful worship service and the time we had to pray with people after that worship service, after all of that and through kind of the fogginess of jet lag, we flew to the Zavkhan province on a smaller aircraft. Not really a small aircraft in what I think of as a small aircraft. I grew up with my dad owning an air coupe, which is a 2-seat airplane. And so when I hear someone say small aircraft, I immediately think maybe Cessna sized. Maybe Cessna sized. Maybe a small, like private jet size. I don't think of a plane that can seat 70 people, which is what the plane was that we rode on to Zavkhan province. So it's not really a small plane that flies from Ulaanbaatar to the Zavkhan province, but it was smaller than the one we came on from Seoul, Korea to Mongolia. So anyhow, we flew to the Zavkhan province. In the airport we went to was definitely very small. It was about like a one gate type of airport with maybe 4 rooms really in the whole airport. And we were picked up there by Pastor Tumaru and by a couple of other people, Bajay, and a couple of people who were driving us and making sure we were getting from one place to another, including Pastor Tumaru's son, whose name I don't know if I ever really got correctly, so I'm not going to attempt to say it here. And they took us to our hotel where we would be staying in Uliesta, which is a major city within the Zavkhan province. And I'm really thankful for being able to stay there, because when you get out further in the countryside in Mongolia, you have limited plumbing facilities. Some places have plumbing and some do not. And ladies, hopefully you know what I mean when I'm talking about limited or non-existent plumbing. It can be difficult if you have grown up in a Western culture, especially a kind of a spoiled Western culture, to imagine what it's like to live a daily life without plumbing. And yet there are many people in the world who do live daily lives without plumbing. They just, they live their life and they don't have plumbing. They have an outhouse, or they have a well, or they have some other way of getting water and doing all the things they need to do with water in their lives. And so there are places in Mongolia where there is no plumbing, and there you are limited in what you can do. But we did stay in a major city in the Zavkhan province in a very nice Western style hotel with full plumbing, which was great. They had some construction going on in their parking lot, but that was fine. They shut off work every night around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and they worked really hard all day long every single day we were there. It was just amazing, and they would work really long hours. And so we stayed in this hotel, and the view from our hotel looked out over this hillside that had a Buddhist temple on top with a bunch of shaman type things outside as well on that hillside. And that hillside had a couple of trails that went across it. You could take those trails and kind of zigzag up to the temple, or you could take those trails and just go across the hillside. And every morning you would see cows and horses and sometimes dogs and sometimes people just wandering across those trails. Now, in Mongolia, especially out in the countryside, what you have is you have houses and areas with a tall fence around the yard or the area that you're in, and then the cows and the horses roam freely wherever they want to go. The cows and the horses are not behind fences. They have free range all over pasture land, but also all over the roadways, all over some of the small towns and the city ways. So you'd go out on the sidewalk and there could be a cow standing there just munching away at the grass on the side of the sidewalk. And I know that Pastor Shaken felt pretty comfortable. He grew up in the country, just shooing the cow to the side. And I grew up raising cows for beef, but somehow I never really got that comfortable with them. I always felt like they were so much bigger than me. Even though I was supposed to water and feed them, I had to go out and do that every day. I felt so much smaller than the cows that we bought, and I would be told by my grandpa and my dad, just take a stick. If they bother you, just give them a good whack. And I would be terrified because I had a few of them chase me and really chase me. I had to basically climb through the fence really quickly, and I still had a cow ram up against the fence that was chasing me. So I never really, even though I raised cows, I never truly got comfortable with them. And I'm maybe more comfortable as I got older. The last one that we had butchered, I think we butchered when I was 13 or 14 years old. And so I was definitely getting older, and I was more comfortable with them at that point. But I still do not expect cows to behave well. And I think it's interesting when I see all these pictures and people are like, oh, it's a cute little innocent cow. And I'm like, have you ever been chased by one? They aren't always that nice and innocent. And I've known people that have had bones broken because they've been trampled by a cow or been stepped on by a cow. So yes, they can be very gentle, but not always. And so anyway, we would see these cows on the sidewalk, and you just kind of shoo them to the side, and you'd walk around them, and they were pretty well fine. They didn't care. They were pretty gentle cows. And we'd also see horses out there wander around by themselves. Now, that does not mean that these cows and horses were wild. No. They were all branded or microchipped. They all belonged to someone. So I kind of think it's interesting because I've seen some posts about the wild horses of Mongolia, And I'm kind of like, are there wild horses in Mongolia? Because as far as I know, every single horse we saw, even if we saw a big herd of horses on the side of the road, they all belonged to a herdsman family. They all belonged to someone. They may have just been roaming, but they all had brands or chips and they belonged to someone. Now, cows and horses are so smart that they know how to find their way home every single night. And they will go home every single night, especially if they are raised by a family that offers them something a little special at night. They'll go home to get that treat. They'll be like, yes, I will go home for that. And in fact, cows will line up in a pecking order when they're going back in a line to wherever they want to go back to at night, whether it's to a barn or to be in a specific area where they're going to stay together for the night. So, and I think horses will do that too. So it's interesting because if you go to Mongolia, again, if you see wild animal, or not wild, if you see animals like cows and horses roaming about, they are not necessarily wild. They are probably domesticated. They probably belong to someone. That is the most likely scenario. Now, while we didn't see very many camels roaming about unless they were with their herders, I think camels are also really intelligent in that way. And then we also saw yaks. I did not take very many pictures of yaks because most of them were let loose and had gone further out to greener pastures by the time we were getting going during the day. But we did see yaks, and yaks are definitely distinct from cows. They have shaggier fur. They have kind of a bonier shoulder structure to them, and their faces, their heads are a little bit different. And we saw baby yaks as well as full-grown yaks, and they are kind of cute in their own way. And they also free range and are known to be intelligent enough to know where their home is and know where their herding family is at the end of the day each day. We did not see any, well, that's not true. We saw big herds of goats and sheep, but even if they were on the side of the road, even if they were crossing the road, they always had a herder with them, usually one or two herders and a big sheep herding dog with them, because goats and sheep are a little dumb in comparison to cows, horses, and yaks. So goats and sheep have to be herded and paid attention to nearly constantly. And herding is still a huge way of life in Mongolia. Half of the population of Mongolia lives in the city of Ulaanbaatar. The other half of the population lives further out in the countryside. Now, in the countryside, there are smaller towns and villages, and people definitely live in those towns and villages with these really high fences around each of their yards to keep out any wild animals and potentially to keep in any small herd that they might have, but also maybe to keep roaming animals just out. And then the herdsmen live out in the pasture lands in gers, and they have sometimes huge, huge flocks. So we visited a herding family that had, I think, around 1,000 animals, including yaks, cows, goats, sheep, horses, and dogs, and some chickens. Chickens are kind of rare in Mongolia, but sometimes a herding family will have like a couple of chickens and be able to collect eggs and maybe have chicken meat at some point during the year. We also did meet a pastor who is a chicken farmer. So he has a chicken farm and he serves chicken at his restaurant, and it's really good fried chicken, great fried chicken, and great spicy fried chicken. And he also made a really good beef Mongolian stew that we got to eat. And I mentioned how good it is because he was very kind and he hosted our team for lunch one day for free. And he's very gracious and kind. He was also one of our drivers who drove us around all over the place in the countryside, going from one small village to another to visiting a herding family. Again, all over the place. He spent hours and hours and hours each day that we were there, driving us around and hosting us, and it was just phenomenal how generous and kind and loving he was. Even though he didn't speak a lot of English and I didn't speak enough Mongolian, we did have translators with us, and his heart was so evident. His loving heart was so evident in all he did, in the way he did things. And his wife, wow, she's also an incredible woman and very strong, very loving. They both go out and take care of people, not only in their city where they live, but around in all the surrounding villages. They might have to drive 2 to 3 hours, but they go and visit people who are Christians who live by themselves or in small groups in some of these other towns and villages. And I was so impressed by them and by their entire church, which is a fairly small church. They live in Uliesta. It's a city of about 30,000 people. There are about 120 Christians there, and they all go to Pastor Tumura's church, although there is going to be a new church plant there that's probably started just about now. There's a new pastor and his wife who have moved out there, and they are going to start a house church and really start growing the Christian community there. They're going to work with Pastor Tumuru to do that. Then there's another young couple who moved specifically to Ulistai to help with those efforts, and he is a chef. And so they are all working together to strengthen the Christian community in Uliesta and in the surrounding Savkan province, in the villages and the towns there. And it was quite impressive. The community that is being built is built on love, built on the love of God, and it's just a beautiful thing. It was an honor and privilege to witness the beauty and love of the Mongolian Christians in their communities. And so our typical days during the Zavkhan province kind of look like this. I'm going to kind of just walk you through it. So we would wake up in the morning, we'd go down to the coffee shop area in the hotel for breakfast, and they would typically feed us some type of what they called morning soup. So the first morning soup was cream of wheat, and it wasn't like I would make cream of wheat or oatmeal. It wasn't very thick at all. It was extremely thin and runny. It was almost like milk with a few grains of cream of wheat in it. It was very, very runny in consistency, and I kind of liked it. Not everybody did. And then they served eggs, toast, and thick slabs of what looked like ham that kind of came off of a roll of ham, like a kind of a beef stick of ham, but not quite a beef stick. If I don't know how to describe it exactly. I don't eat ham and I don't eat eggs, so I typically wouldn't eat that part of the breakfast, which was fine. I had brought a protein mix with me and I mixed it up in my hotel room every morning. And so I'd have my usual protein drink breakfast and then have a little bit of the breakfast downstairs. And then I'd have a cup of coffee, which was, you could get plain coffee provided by the hotel, but I typically would spoil myself and get a caramel latte, and it was quite good. So I loved having that for my wake up most mornings. And so from there, we would usually have some time just to chat and hang out with Pastor Shaka and Haka and really, build our team up a little bit more. And then we would meet our drivers downstairs and they would take us out, and we would go to anywhere between 3 and 4 locations in the countryside, which typically meant driving for anywhere between an hour to 3 hours to get different places, usually an hour and a half until our initial stop, and then another 45 minutes to another hour, and then another 45 minutes to an hour. So we spent quite a bit of time in cars, and it was fun. It was interesting. As I shared in my last podcast, we definitely had some adventures and a lot of opportunities for our driver, Baji, again, whose name I'm probably not saying right, to turn to my friend Mia and I and say, God is good. And we'd respond with, God is good, regardless of the circumstance, both the fun moments and the little bit, the more dicey moments. And so we had a lot of fun doing those drives. We saw quite a bit of the countryside. As I mentioned earlier, in the countryside of Mongolia, there is limited to no plumbing, which means that you could stop at a, quote, rest area, and it would be an outhouse. And some of those outhouses were definitely not very clean. I don't think there's a government service that really takes care of them like they're taking care of here in America. We have, the I don't even know who takes care of it, but I know we have someone like the Department of Transportation or someone takes care of the rest areas on the highways in America. So anyway, we had to often, the ladies anyway, often had to go and find some place to squat and to relieve ourselves, and that wasn't a whole lot of fun. I don't enjoy doing that type of thing. I mean, I've been camping off and on my whole life, but it's not always my favorite thing to do. And Haka would show me and I the best places. Like you could be a very flat looking countryside, but there would be a depression in the earth where there'd been a stream bed at some point. And so you'd basically climb down into this depression and kind of hide there. And that was the best place for the ladies to go. And one time we actually were at a place where there's kind of a rocky outcrop that we could hide behind. But you get the idea. It wasn't always a comfortable thing. And when we got to towns and villages, most of them have like a well of some kind of community well, but they don't have plumbing that goes to their houses necessarily. Most of them have outhouses. And so, again, there'll be a tall fence around their yard, and you go into the fence, you go into the person's house, and they're always gracious and kind and loving. Always served us food, always served us milk tea, always served us milk curds and fruit and mutton soup, mutton vegetable soup. Mutton is one of the most common foods that you're going to eat in Mongolia. Mutton and goat and cow meat; those are all the types of meat you're going to eat a lot. You're also going to get a lot of dairy served to you in the form of milk tea, milk curds, dried milk curds, and also yak butter or cow butter, sometimes with sugar, flour, and raisins in it, which is honestly quite delicious. Highly recommend trying a yak butter with flour, sugar, and raisins in it at some point in time in your life. It's almost like eating a protein-packed jam on a piece of toast. It's so, so good. I don't know how else to describe it. It just is, it's really, really good. But we were served so much food by everyone whose house we went to, and they would make cookies for us. And yeah, amazing hospitality, very generous and kind and loving people that we met and who we prayed with when we were at their houses and worshiped with them and heard their stories. And it was really awesome. I mean, I thought when I went I was going to encourage people, but I really came away feeling encouraged and feeling like I had witnessed amazing things, like I had walked in the book of Acts and the Bible and seen how amazing faith could be every single day. That's what I experienced when I went to Mongolia, and it kind of blew me away, honestly. So a typical day involved us getting up fairly early and then going for a drive and visiting different places and kind of driving around from place to place to place and really getting to meet people and talk to people, hear their stories, pray with them, and be amazed by them every single time, whether they were government officials, fourth grade teachers, business owners who lived above their store, who wanted to introduce us to their son or grandson who could speak English and who had gone to an English speaking camp. There were a lot of kids who approached us just to say hi because they wanted to practice their English on us, and that was fun. And these were kids that were part of the Christian community members that we were meeting, but some of them were just kids that were walking down the street and they wanted to say hi to us. They wanted to practice their English on us, and that was actually honestly quite fun and enjoyable to do. So after all of that, we would typically start driving back. And at one time we stopped at a grocery store kind of on our way back and got some snacks and some drinks. And we just typically drive back to our hotel, and then we'd have dinner at the hotel or out and about. And then it would be evening, and we'd pretty well call it an evening and just retreat to our hotel rooms and have quiet time and private time. I know that Mia and I watched a bunch of K-dramas and shared our love of storytelling with each other. And that was a lot of fun. And we made each other laugh about a lot of things, some of which I would be too embarrassed to talk about on my podcast. But we'll just say that we made each other laugh about a lot of things. And we had a lot of fun together, as well as just good, Christian fellowship together. We prayed, we talked about messages we were going to share and testimonies we were going to share and things we were amazed by that we saw. And it was just very, very good. Now, about 3/4 of the way through our time in the Zavkhan province, I became horribly ill and threw up and was basically sick for about 48 hours of intensity. And then I still was not feeling great after that. So I was a little worried about food, but I kept kind of going, and I missed one of the church services. We did do a church service one evening in Lewistai on Tuesday night. We had a worship service, and we each gave little bits of testimony. We prayed and we sang, and I would say one of the most moving things was singing Amazing Grace in English and Mongolian, and then all together. And it was wonderful to praise God and to do so with a great group of people. I may have shared that on the last podcast. I have to admit, I'm doing one podcaster after another, and I don't always remember what I said in the last one. So hopefully I'm not repeating myself too much. But it was really a good trip, really interesting to see the different way that people live in Mongolia, the way the herdsmen allow their herds to go all over the place. And I mean, we'd wake up in the morning to the sound of a horse whinnying outside of our window or a cow mooing outside of our window. We never knew which one we were going to hear. One morning we woke up and we looked out the window, and it was the first day of school in Mongolia, and we saw this young woman taking pictures of her sons in their school uniforms, and it seemed just like something you would see in America. And I thought, yes, parents love their kids all the world over, and if it's the first day of school, we want to take their pictures and celebrate how beautiful our kids are. And so it was really great to see that, and it was just really great to see families having fun together and communities working together. And so I would say one of the things I really love about travel is actually seeing not only the ways that people are different, but the way that we're all similar, the way that we all value our children, the way that we all value community, the way that we love each other, and we want the best for our families, and we want the best for our communities. And it's really good to see that around the world, and I love seeing that in Mongolia. So I've been a little all over the place in this episode, feeling very unsure about what I covered in the last episode, so again, I hope I'm not repeating too much. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today was courage. And I've talked about community, which is one of the topics I wanted to talk about, but I want to talk about courage a little bit. It took a lot of courage for me to go on this trip. Even though I love to travel, usually within 24 hours of when I start traveling, I get a little nervous. I start wondering, should I be going on this trip? Do I have everything ready? What if I forget something? And all those, those little things that you can worry about or have fears about. So I have those, but this time was a different one because I'd never been on a mission trip before, so I wondered how different it would be, and was I really in the right mindset, and had I prayed up enough, had I memorized enough scripture, or was I really ready to go? Those sorts of questions I had for myself, those little doubts that popped up in my mind. And I prayed my way through them, yes, and I had a super group of encouraging people to be around, and that was awesome. But there were still things that I kept close to the vest. So one of the things that even my closest friends at my church may not know about me is that I'll tell them that I'm an introvert, like I'm a socialized introvert. I don't often tell people that I have a little bit of social anxiety, and I have a little bit of social anxiety specifically about being with a group of people day after day for, a couple of weeks at a time, and wondering if I'm going to fit in the group. Am I going to have a place? Am I going to have a purpose there? Am I going to feel like basically the extra person that doesn't fit, And that's just, old social anxiety, old worries from, a life of experience in which I have unfortunately experienced those moments of feeling like I didn't fit in at all. But I would say that's one of the things that really gets me when I'm going to be with people a lot for a couple of weeks, especially, knowing that I was going to be staying with Mia, my friend, as a roommate, and just all those things. And I just wasn't sure. And yet, every step of the way, it was good. God was good every step of the way. Mia was an awesome roommate. We got along really, really well, and I appreciated her, and she cared for me so much, especially when I was sick, and it was just really helpful. I really felt strengthened by all of the relationships in the team, our friendships, and our sisterly and brotherly love for each other. It was really, really good, and I appreciate each and every member of the team because of that. And I also discovered throughout the course of the trip that I felt competent. I felt confident in God's purpose for me in that team within that mission trip. And it just was something that kind of built up throughout the trip. And I was amazed at how confident and confident and comfortable I felt by the end of the trip. Now, that's not saying that, I'm a perfect person or that I wasn't awkward sometimes and that I didn't have like moments of social anxiety or anything like that. I'm not going to say that all that stuff just went away, as much as somehow throughout the trip, I just felt like God strengthened me, that God grew in me this confidence in my own abilities, in my confidence, in my ability to be a part of a team, in my ability to have a place in the team and have purpose. Even if, I wasn't building a building or doing something super exciting for God, I was there to pray and worship and encourage. I really felt like I was in the right place at the right time, and I was doing what God wanted me to do. And again, I felt filled with confidence and confidence throughout the whole process. And sometimes I think something like that happens when we simply just step forward in faith and we start doing whatever it is we feel called to do without allowing our fears to hold us back. I think it's really important to remember that God does not fill us with a spirit of fear. He fills us with His strength and His love and His confidence, and we can rely on Him in all circumstances. But for some reason, on this trip, I really felt like I got that more, like in action, in every moment. I feel like the truth of all of that sank in a little deeper. And I would say one of the things that I feel has changed in my life because of just a 2-week trip is the fact that I feel more confident in God's love. I feel more confident in God's purpose in my life. I feel more confident in who I am as a person and what I bring to the table and what my skills are. And so that's one of the reasons I'm actually doing 3 podcasts a week for the month of September, is I wanted to expand on some of the skills that I think I have been building up and that God has been building up in me. And I think podcasting is a part of that. I think that even though I may struggle to speak correctly all the time, I may ramble now and then, I may repeat information, I think that speaking is something that God has been building up in me as a skill and as a way for me to reach other people, to encourage other people, and hopefully have a purpose of impacting other people in a positive way. And so that's why I'm podcasting more. And it's also something that I'm going to be taking into my writing, that sense of competency and confidence. I feel like it is changing how I write and what I write. And so I look forward to seeing what comes out of my writing in the future as this confidence and competency continues to grow because of God's work in me that He started probably a long time ago, but really grew in me a great deal on the mission trip to Mongolia. Now, next week, I'll talk about the last 3 days of our trip, and I'll talk about coming home from the trip and how home looks a little bit different after I've been away, and how there are definitely things going on in my life right now that are not easy, but I feel filled with strength and confidence because of God's love in my life and how I saw it grow and become more real in a deep way as I was going about the mission trip in Mongolia. Even when I was sick, I came through being sick with a different attitude that I had going into it, or even when I was in the middle of it. It was really, really interesting because when I was at the worst part of being sick, I just wanted to go home. Like, I really wanted to go home. And then as I was getting better, I realized, no, I don't want to go home. I want to see every day of this mission trip to the end. I want to fulfill the purpose that I felt God gave me in going there. And it just really was interesting to feel that type of confidence. And I wish I could say I was confident like that all the time, but I hope that it's something I can latch on to and continue to build and grow. I feel like it is something that God is calling me to be more confident in the love and the skills and the work that He has done in me. And so with that, I leave you to next time when I'll do another set of reflections about Mongolia. Actually, I say next time, that'll be next Monday. Before then, you'll get another Fast Facts about Mongolia episode on Wednesday and another episode about writing and writing prompts on Friday. Thank you for joining me. This is Tyreen Martinson with The Truth About Storytelling.